In this video, we're going to take a look at the settings and review all of the different settings in Trackfront in great detail. So click on your Settings tab, and we're going to do this as an account administrator. So obviously, if you're not an administrator and you have some restricted account settings, your view of this will be a little bit different. But we're going to go through this as an account administrator who has access to pretty much everything. So starting out, you're going to see My Profile. This is available to everybody. This is where you're going to enter your personal information, your title, your time zone, which is very important to set, a picture or any kind of image that you want as your avatar. And here's where you can change your email for your login and or change your password as well. The next setting is notifications. And what this does is let you choose a preference as to how often you want to get emailed every time something happens in Trackfront. So I personally have mine set at each hour. You can have it set to immediately or once a day, and you'll get a summary of everything that's happened in one email once a day, or in my case, I have it set for each hour. So every hour I have a email that's sent out to me that says everything's happened on every project or any other status updates or changes all get summarized in one email, so it reduces the amount of emails that I have. All right, let's move on to the Account tab here. So here's where you have your personal company information. So you're going to have your company name, you're going to have your company address, and this is where you can choose your branding logo. So this is your interface logo. So if you notice up here, you will have a logo, your own company logo set up here. Otherwise, it'll say Trackfront by default. And then you have a on white version as well here that you can upload for emails, and your email communications will be branded with your logo that way as well. Next is the term dictionary. And this is where you can personalize Trackfront to have the language that you personally use. So for instance, if you call estimates quotations or quotes or proposals, you don't have to call it estimate anymore. You can just change it right here and have the language wherever it appears in Trackfront to now say proposals. Same thing with projects. You might call projects collaborations or jobs. You can change it here as well. Time and expense defaults to whatever you want to call it. You can call it time entry or expense entry. Or if you don't like scope change, you can call it scope adjustment like we call it here. Or maybe there's a scope creep type of thing. Whatever language you want to use, you can update the term dictionary here, and it'll be globally applied throughout the entire interface of Trackfront. All right, next is billing. This is where you manage your billing plan. You can change it from annual to monthly or vice versa. You have details of your billable users. You can upgrade your storage here. You have your billing address, and you can update your credit card that you have on file. Here's where you can cancel your subscription, which we hope you don't do. And this is a place where you can see all of your payments and invoices over here and be able to click on them and see the details. All right, moving right along, let's go on to the users. So these are your paid users that you set up in your account. If you click on a new one, you can create a new user, but you can take a look at any particular user in here, and you can make them active or inactive, put their name, their title, their email, phone number if you want in here, and then the permission role that you have set up, and we'll get into that here shortly. You apply the permission role to that particular user, and then you'll be able to assign the right amount of permissions and visibility and whatnot that you've already predefined for that paid user in the account. All right. Next is contacts, and don't confuse contacts with users. Contacts are your clients or any other people that you collaborate with in the system. So this is your large database of contacts in essence here. So as you enter new contacts either in projects or in estimates, they're going to appear here, or you can also create a new one here as well and create one from scratch and add them to an existing organization. So if we take a look at any of these particular people, we can see that they're associated with an organization. You can actually associate them with multiple organizations, and you can put in as much information as you want in here, their phone number, their email at the very least, first name, last name, title, and whatnot. Another thing to mention is if you want to find somebody very quickly, you can do a keyword search in here, and you'll quickly be able to see that person's first name or last name. Is an easy way to search through contacts if you have thousands of them like we do here. So let's look at organizations. Works the exact same way. It's just a list of organizations. Keep in mind, Trackfront keeps a separate database for organizations as contacts. So contacts are associated with existing organizations. It's a record that's separate in the system. Again, you can search for any particular organization up here in the search box up here, and you can choose their default address. You can put their default billing terms if you would like. You can set that. You can add one or more contacts this way, or remove contacts. If somebody no longer works in that organization, you can remove them from there and they won't be associated anymore. And then you can change the name up here as well. So a quick, easy way to update all of your organizations. All right, permission roles, a very important piece of this. So when you first log into Trackfront, there's going to be a default admin role set up, and then you can create additional roles, as many as you want in here, and that's how you assign them to your users, is by creating different permission roles. So these could be paid users and or other groups of people that you want to have access to Trackfront at various different levels. So when you go into any of these permission roles, we're going to look at we have one permission role for our staff. You can have these main checkboxes for estimate, project, time and expense, and settings. And you can check or uncheck these main areas. So for instance, let's say you don't use estimates at all in Trackfront. You just use projects and time and expense. You can uncheck estimate and it'll disappear from all of these users' main menu. So they won't even see estimates in here. So it'll be just like disappeared from the interface. But underneath each one, you can see the various options you have. They're all pretty self-explanatory. You can go through and choose which ones you want to enable and which ones you don't want to enable. For estimates, as you can see, you can let people create estimates and edit and send their own estimates. You can disable them being able to delete an estimate. If you would like somebody to have a review or be an approver of an estimate, that will be a part of a role permission that you can set. As you can see, it requires approval to send is a permission role that is a setting that we choose to have for anybody who creates estimates here. It'll go through an admin approval first. Project, you can have different permissions here for creating a new project. Can you post and reply? Can you edit the project teams? Can you edit the project statuses and dates? Can you view project time and expense? And can you view that estimate that's connected with that project? Maybe you have a freelancer who you would not like to see the actual estimate with that project, where internal staff you might want to. Time expense, same thing. Can you enter time? Can you enter expenses? And can you view other people's time and expense? All right, that's it for account. Now let's move over to estimate settings. Now, in estimate settings, there is the terms and conditions. This is where you're going to put in your contractual language. So you can create one or multiple contracts in here. Depends on your business, how many contracts or different contractual languages that you want to maintain in here. You can just create a new one, give it a name. A display name is how it'll show up on the customer's view. The name here is more of an internal thing in the drop-down. When you choose it in your estimate edit screen, and then you can start to, put your contractual language. You can type it in here and save it, or you can copy and paste from another document that you may have, and you simply just fill it out that way. And then when it's finished, you can simply see, some basic formatting and contractual language in here. And like I said, you can enter as many of these as you want. It doesn't have to be one or two. It could be 25 of these if you want to. All right, new estimate email. These are some default language that's going to come up every time you send an email. So what's really nice about this is everything you see in brackets is a dynamic field, in essence, that is described over here. So the estimate or scope adjustment number, the estimate or scope adjustment category, the title, the recipient first name, the recipient last name, the sender first name, the sender last name, the type, whether it's an estimate or a scope adjustment, today's date, the payment terms, the placement of the estimate link. All of this stuff is what you use to build this email. So here, as you can see, the subject of the email says it's the type of estimate, the number, the category, and the title is what shows up in the subject. You can customize this to however you want. And then you say, hi, first name. Here's a link to the estimate for the project title that we discussed. Let me know if you have any questions. The link to the estimate will show up as a button, and then you say thanks, sender first name. That would be yourself, and it's basically like a form field in lots of other word processing programs. So this becomes very customizable and automatically gets filled with the right information every time you send an estimate. Okay. Estimate approval. Now, when there's that contractual language, when the customer receives the estimate, they view the proposal, the cost estimate, the terms and conditions, and then the estimate approval block at the bottom where they sign off. This is the language for the customer approval block. And you can modify this to whatever you feel is appropriate language for your business. And again, you can use these variable fields in here, like the estimate scope adjustment number, whether it's an estimate or scope adjustment, the title, the client first name, the client last name, the type, today's date, the payment terms, as well as the organization and organization address. If you wanted to include all of that in there, you can customize this language however you want. All right, next is payment terms. These are your default payment terms. Trackfront comes with one or a couple, I think, already specified in here. You can just simply create a new term, give it a name, you can rearrange it, and all this does is let you customize what shows in the drop-down when you create a new estimate. All right, estimate numbering, this is where you can specify what the next estimate number may be. Let's say when you first log into Trackfront, your default first estimate will be estimate number 1. Let's say you don't like to call it estimate number 1. Maybe you want to change it to 100 or 500 or 9999. Totally depends on what you would like to do. But you can change this number at any given time. You'll always see the current estimate number in here, which you want to choose something that's further along if you ever want to change it down the road. Quick way to simply change that and save that number. All right, items. This is where the power of Trackfront comes in. This is where you're going to put all of your either service items or your services that you offer, your materials, your costs, your resold items, anything you want to define in here and quote in an estimate, this is where you're going to define it. Now, if you have a list already in a spreadsheet somewhere, one of the nice things is you can export a blank template, or in our case here, you have the entire list that's in here exported as a CSV file, and then you can make any updates to it and copy and paste in there and do a mass import. Or you can do it one by one, where you go in here, you give the item a new name. If you want to track it as time or expense, you would check either of these. You give it a description, that would be the default description that shows up in your estimates. You put a rate, a dollar amount in here, whether it's an hourly rate or a cost, whatever you want it to be. You can add an adjustment that's automatically going to be added in here, whether it's a markup or a markdown, either by a dollar amount or percentage. You just specify with the percentage symbol and it'll be automatically in here. And you can choose whether it's a taxable item, you would choose the taxable you would choose the tax that you already have predefined in here. And then if you have different item categories set up, you can tag these with different categories. So in other words, if you created different categories to organize all of your items, so you can just go in here and choose one of your existing categories, select it, and that would be tagged with that. And that's an easy way to organize it here. So, and as you can see here, you can put multiple categories or tags to any of these items, and you'll be able to see them here at any time and edit them as needed. All right, item categories is next. This is where you create your categories to manage your items, to be able to organize them into these different buckets. If you need another one, you simply create a new one. All right, now groups. When you first log into Trackfront, there will be one default blank group in here with one default item. Okay. Now, when you want to create a new group, you simply pick and choose and add items in here and rearrange them in any order you want, and then you actually can set your group visibility settings and all of these other defaults, whether it's a multiplier adjustment or a tax. You can set all of that up, and that's going to define your various groups that you're going to use when you create estimates. So if you take the time to do this up front, it's going to save you a lot of time when you create estimates to have all of these predefined and ready to go. It's kind of like a bucket of things that you do for the different kinds of projects or different sub-projects or different parts of a small activity within a project that you may do. It's completely up to you how you want to organize these and create these things. Whatever makes sense for you, these are at your disposal to create a new group and then start to add different items to them and rearrange them and use them within your estimates however you may feel. All right, next is files. So in your estimates, you're able to add attachments to create proposals. So this is where you manage all of your files in here. So you can go in here and edit any of these files, and you can put a category where, much like in items, you can organize these in various categories, and you can have a display name and instead of just the original file name, if you want to change it, you can give it a cleaner display name in here. But to add a new file, you simply drag and drop files into here, or you can click in here and select different files, and that's a quick, easy way to start building your library as well as searching through them. Or if you wanted to filter by a particular category, you can do it like this as well. So this is a library that you'll be able to reference anytime you want to create new templates and or estimates on the fly. Also here, the file categories, just like with items, you'll be able to define as many categories as you want and be able to tag all your files and attachments this way based on these things. If you wanted to create a new one, you simply do it here. All right, estimate templates. This is where you manage your templates. So again, just like groups, when you actually use templates, you're making Trackfront extremely easy to create customized proposals. So for a particular template, like for a particular service like an explainer video, which this may be something you do and quote on a very regular basis, it makes all the sense in the world is to create a template. So if you click on one of these things, this has the groups, the language, the actual quantities in here, any adjustments that you did to the language in here. It's basically a snapshot of a completely finished estimates with all of the attachments, the terms and conditions, any visibility settings, any group multipliers, the header already named properly. It's all ready to go. And then when you go into create a new estimate, you simply select this template. And then it's not set in stone in the estimate edit screen. You can go in here and edit it and make any final tweaks or change any of these numbers as you need for that particular project, but you're 99% finished with that. So you can do that through this interface by creating a new template, or you can do it over on the estimate side of things, creating a new estimate, saving it, or using an old estimate and then saving it as a template, and it'll add it into here automatically. And then if you needed to edit it or delete it, this is where you manage them here. All right. Expiration. So estimate expiration basically allows you, it's going to be disabled by default, but if you wanted to enable this and put a number of days in here, what this will do is if a particular client has been sent an estimate, but they haven't approved it, they haven't taken action on it, they haven't declined it, they haven't done anything with it, after 90 days, it's automatically going to change the status of the estimate to expired. So you don't have to have these estimates that are just hanging out there in limbo all the time. This will kind of do a cleanup for you and make it expired. So that way that's a status that you know, hey, it's too late. That status is expired. And what's nice too is the customer will get an email that says your estimate has now been expired, and maybe that's a reminder for them to take a look at it one more time. But chances are after 90 days somebody's probably not interested, or the project has been shelved or canceled, or they have gone with somebody else. All right, the last thing here is tax rules. So this is where you can set up any of your tax rates. So if you have a particular sales tax that you use locally or for your state, you can set up one or multiple tax rules here and assign them to different items, as we saw earlier in the items screen. Okay. That was estimates. Now let's take a look at projects. So the only thing you have to define with projects is your stages. So by default, you're going to have one project stage that's created for you here. But what you do is you simply, if you wanted to create a new project stage, let's give it a project stage name like test. I can go in here and add multiple stages very easily in here. I'll just call this stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, for instance. And you can see that it builds it in here. So you can modify these at any time. You have to have a stage already, you have to have a set of stages already set up to create any kind of project. So this is how you can communicate what are the various stages you go through on the various projects that you work on. And as you can see here in this particular instance for Pure Eye, lots of different stages based on the different kinds of projects that we do. And they're all defined here, and then this is what gets tracked when you collaborate with your clients on various stages of the project. I'm going to delete this one here. All right. And finally, the last thing you have to set up in your settings is your time and expense settings. So if you click on this, your only settings here are your default increments for time and expense. So whenever somebody enters time in here, this is what this affects. So you can have a default increment of 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, 30 minutes, or an hour. And then you can choose how you would like those rounded for time entry. So in other words, if somebody enters 1 minute of time, it's going to get rounded up to 5 minutes. If somebody enters 6 minutes of time, it'll get rounded up to 6 minutes, and so forth, depending on round up, round down, or round to closest. It's completely your personal preference. All right, that was the overview on all of the settings for Trackfront. Once you get all of this set up and tailored to your particular business, you are ready to create estimates and start working on projects and collaborating with your clients or other teams internally or externally.